Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about feeling invisible. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is a thinker, and I have Sharon here who is here to help us really think about this in a whole new light. So, with that being said, thank you so much, Sharon, for coming onto my show, sharing your time, your perspective. You could be anywhere in the world right now, but you are with me, so I thank you for this time. So let's just dive right in. When you hear the words feeling invisible, what does that make you think about?
Well, for me, it was I didn't want to be seen because when I was a kid, like kind of as young as maybe 5 or 6, but especially when I was more like 8 or 10, I didn't want to be the victim of my dad's sexual abuse.
Oh.
And I thought if I buckle down, get focused, don't rock the boat, be obedient and get good grades, I might be safe. And it worked pretty well. But it wasn't until I was retired and was looking for clients when I realized maybe I'm still maybe invisible. And I realized that I had gone my whole career and felt in the bottom of my stomach invisible, like my real self wasn't being heard. um Seen, yeah, I kind of I dressed kind of nice and had good looking hair, used to. And um but being heard, I would be like, even in coaching school, I started coaching class a week before I retired, and I would let everybody else talk, and then I'd kind of summarize the wisdom at the end, I
Yeah.
was maybe guarded about my participation. And
Yes.
about the time, at that same time, I got a profile results in the mail. It said I was an influencer. And boy, do you have this wrong? That's not me. um in my career, I was in data processing, and I worked for Boeing, Boeing for about 8.5 years, and IBM for that was a short gig over the Y2K time period. um I did do Toastmasters, and I got I remember my competent Toastmaster speech that felt really nice and good because it you're speaking from your heart, and I like to do that.
Yeah.
But I also like to encourage and inspire people, and I did that kind of in a guarded way. I'd help people with their resume and help them bring out their gold uniqueness on their resume that sometimes, we're too close to our own skin.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
I, I became a behavioral scientist because I wanted to help bring out the best in people. So how many people I'm in a loneliness group. I lead a loneliness group, and I'm realizing how many people have not processed their trauma from their life.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
the trauma in my home wound up being my sister having a baby by my dad. And I didn't even know um, the full result until about 15 years later, when I put two and two together, and I thought I was strong enough to handle the full secret. And she's now passed on, and my brother's passed on. They're both from accidents, but my brother actually tried finding his stepbrother at one point and realizing what it must have been like to be a, a girl, a woman in our family. And I've I've never married, never had kids, and usually oftentimes when there's trauma in the home, you either go all hog wild with the trauma and just keep going down that road, or you become so quiet and reserved and shy maybe that And I put on a lot of weight that, I was going to school at night and weekends, and I'd grab a handful of cookies and call it dinner. So that thought in your mind that sometimes says, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, we have convinced ourselves of rejecting ourselves so that people can reject us so that we can become invisible. You know what I mean? And the fact that you talked about trauma is a beautiful thing because people don't realize like that's the reason why we want to be invisible sometimes. You know what I mean? Because we don't want people to see our trauma. We don't want people to see the pain, or we don't want to invoke the pain to come onto us. So it's easier to just play the, oh, I'll be a good girl as long as you don't mess with me type of deal, because at least we know that, okay, I will at least be somewhat safe. So that aspect is true, because a lot of the times people feel that just bringing that attention or just bringing any type of attention is bad attention because we don't know where the outcome may be. And especially if you deal with on a home that is unsafe, physically, sexually, emotionally, mentally, whatever it may be in your circumstance, it's always going to feel like the easiest route is to be invisible. You know what I mean? Because the walls don't get hurt. You know what I mean? Sometimes, you know what I'm saying? So it's like it's easier to stay quiet. So I'm glad that you brought that up because it makes it so real, because I was talking to my mom about this, and because she was just talking to me about how she wanted to change her hairdo. She wants to change herself completely because she wants to be invisible. She wants to blend in. She doesn't like the attraction that she's getting from men. She doesn't like the attraction that she's getting from people. And I had to like sit her down and like relax. And I was like, listen, you are made who you are, all that you are, because God made you that way. So if God made you the way that all that you are, you can't reject how God made you because you are perfect as you are. And if the people who are in front of you cannot receive you the way that God has made you to be, then that is not your problem. That is their problem. And pray that God opens their heart to reveal the truth. But don't put that burden on yourself, because you are not owed anything from anyone out in this world. You are given the peace of mind because God has already given you. So embrace everything that you are, bask in it. Don't flaunt on it, don't boast in it, because God does not like a boastful heart, but embrace it, accept it, because when you accept yourself for all that you are, then you are accepting God in your life, God who made you for all that you are. So love yourself. And she literally sat there and like a tear rolled down. And she's just like, I don't know where you get this from. But it's like, because we all go through this. We all have these feelings. But when you have this relationship with God, He gives you this peace. And I don't mean to like steer it in this direction, but it kind of it's flowing out. So I'm just working with it. And I just hope that anybody who's listening knows that they are perfect in all that they are, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's not your problem how the world sees you. It's how you see you that becomes a problem. And if you don't see the beauty of all that you are, then it's a problem. You know what I mean? It's a problem. So, I mean, in my perspective, do you feel that or in your perspective, do you feel that in this world full of billions and billions of people, everywhere, there's so many people, is it easier to just become a number than to actually stand out?
No, I like standing out. Okay, so I showed you this little, well, let's start with this one. Um, when I did Dale Carnegie and Toastmasters, one of the first things you learn in Dale Carnegie is don't complain, criticize, or condemn.
Yeah.
That means yourself and others. I was surprised at how difficult and how new a concept this was in the class that I was in. People struggled 3, 4 weeks, maybe the whole course on do not condemn, criticize, or complain. But one of the one of the things that made such a difference, even before I started coaching class, was um, I had gotten transferred to Tampa, Florida from Seattle with my
Nice.
job. And I had felt for about 6 months that I might be moving. And so emotionally, I was kind of prepared. I felt like God was showing me as I was a newborn baby, and He was going to show me a new side of love. And My friends have said, well, before you turn around and come home from homesickness, give it 6 months. And 3 months I was doing good. I've got this, but by the fourth month, I had hit the wall. My friends were slow coming around meeting people, but I for some reason resorted to my Bible concordance and I looked up the word courage. I needed some courage.
Yeah.
And I found in Joshua chapter 1 and 2, there's several references to courage.
Yeah.
And I just, oh, have good courage, strong courage, be of good courage, do not be afraid. God will not forsake you. And after 2, 3 days, I thought, okay, I got strong enough, and I imagine putting a stop sign in front of my nose, like 4 inches from my nose, and said, I I stopped my foot and said, I refuse to live my life based on fear.
Amen.
That is such a powerful lesson I'm passing on to you today because so much of TV is trying to uh, suck you into their fear strategies, all
Yeah.
the ads. And I, the only things I watch on TV anymore is maybe a half hour of news and Wheel of Fortune. And once a month or so, I'll watch a Hallmark movie. But when you decide to not listen to all the fear stuff, I'll never forget the ad on the TV way back about when you go see your rheumatoid arthritis doctor, ask about some medicine. And I said, if I see a rheumatoid arthritis, I have yet to see one. When? Not assuming everybody does. And,
Yeah.
and that just reeked of programming us to rely on doctors who do our thinking for us. Excuse me, I have never
Absolutely.
spent a night in the hospital. I did have
Possible.
cataract surgery, but that was not overnight. Never had cancer, never had diabetes. I'm in charge of my health and I have a self-healing body.
I love it. I love your energy. I love your spirit. I love the way that you're processing things. And I love the fact that you went to God with this. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Because in the Bible, it says, come to me with your issues, come to me with whatever that you're going through. And you were like, you know what? I have this fear that's unexplainable, that's unnecessary. So let me dive into the Bible. Let me dive in and see. And you know what popped in? Courage. And the fact that you got courage and it helped you continue forward until you said, you know what, until God says it's time for me to go, I will stay here, and you stay put. And I think one thing that I love the most is that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable with God. And I don't think people realize that just being vulnerable with God allows you to be seen by God, allows you to realize that you are seen. You are not just a number in this world. You are not just a heart that's just beating. You are a whole, a soul, a spirit, a body, an everything. You are a child of God. No matter how old you are a child of God. And because of that, you have placed your mark and you allowed that vulnerability to shine. And that vulnerability became your strength. And people don't realize that vulnerability can be your strength and that you can be seen by your vulnerability. When we have these deep conversations, you know what I mean? That is a moment of our strengths. And I think that's the whole point of why I do my show, is to allow people to realize like there are other people out in this world from all across the world, from all types of walks of life who deal with the same things that you are dealing with, because there are so many people out in this world who feel invisible, or they wish that their superpower was invisibility. I mean, what is your thoughts on people who say that they wish that their superpower was invisibility?
Uh, Gosh, that's a question I've never even considered before. Let me mention though about God's love is I'm starting just in the last couple of weeks to say, can I possibly love myself as much as God loves me?
Mm.
And what it seems to be bringing up for me, Mitzi, is that I need to love me first before I love my audience. I needed, when I was first talked to about I brought on our CEO, and I said, well, how does that make you feel? And I said, it feels like a huge demand on my love for the world and my audience and the work that I have yet to do. But uh, God says, I'm especially fond of you.
I love
And
that.
that's from the book The Shack. Quite a message in that movie, and that we have a brain that is full of ingenuity, and worry is a misuse of my imagination. Your brain is to be curious and courageous and full of ideas and innovation, creativity. In fact, uh, curiosity, in fact, is an act of vulnerability and courage.
Yeah.
Um, I've been talking quite a bit in my loneliness group about vulnerability, and I asked one question like, is how is authenticity connected to resilience? I was shocked at the answer. I asked AI, and he said it's got lots of connection with resilience, because if you're not genuine, authentic, it's going to be hard to be resilient.
Yeah. Because it's you're only putting up a
And
mask. Yeah.
yeah, and then I also asked, what impact does desire have on resilience? Again, I was shocked, which is part of being invisible or feeling invisible, is our desires have vanished. We forgot about, what does happiness have to do with anything anyway, you know? A lot. How are you going to move forward if you don't have a desire? And in fact, the AI that I've been using knows me fairly well, and it gave me examples of what I've done with desire, to personal growth and getting a degree or two and bettering myself, actually looking for wisdom that I can share with you. Um,
Absolutely.
so, um, yeah, I've pondered a lot over the years about the scriptures about that your joy may be full. My joy? My joy? Where is it?
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, it's true because when we are so focused on anxiety, when we are so focused on worry, when we are so focused on fear, we have no time to think about peace, joy, happiness, gratitude. And where does the Bible says to turn away from yourself and start to serve, right? When you serve, what happens? You feel fulfilled, you feel this desire inside, you want more, you want to do more for other people, then you get this joy and then you have this peace because not only does it not take it off on you, but you start to realize that other people are trying to serve you too. Then they try to do things to fill your cup. And it's like, the more we try to fill other people's cups, then the more other people would try to fill other people's cup, and that may be your own cup. Or you know what I mean? And we don't even realize that. So it's just like we have to always be in this attitude of gratitude, this attitude of service, this attitude of, of just contentment, because we have to be satisfied with what we have and where we are at, because that comes down to loving yourself. Because then you could be like, Mitzi, I love myself right now because I love where I'm at. I love that I have a home. I love that I have food in my refrigerator. I love I have electricity. I love that I have internet. I love the simple things. Like one thing that I'm learning now is practicing your gratitude muscle. You know what I mean? So the more you start thanking for the littlest things, then you start realizing how much God is truly in your life. And you no longer want to have this invisibility as your superpower. You want to be in front. You know what I mean? You want to be of service. You want to be willing to do whatever you need to do for somebody else, because that you know that it will eventually help you in return because our world is so small. I mean, we live in Earth. We don't jump from other planets. You know what I mean? We don't visit other planets to planets. Like, we don't do that. We stay on
Yeah,
our Earth. You know what I mean? So it's like our Earth is small. We may travel around, but if some people don't, you know what I mean? Some people just stay in their small town. And if you stay in your small town, then you're going to be limited by what you only see. And sometimes people are so limited that they only can see as far as their hands can reach. So it's like we need to start expanding our minds, expanding our hearts, expanding our bodies, expanding everything that all that we are where God permits us so that we can be of service. And then the glory that we feel doesn't come to us, but it goes back to God. You know what I mean? And that's all that we want. So I have to ask you, if you could have any superpower, what would be your superpower? That's a thinker. Look at me making you think on my show.
I what first comes to mind is flying. I like to whistle at crows, and
Not a weird thing.
I I like watching the planes go over because around Seattle there's a lot of planes, as if that's not true for a lot of cities. But the bee well, and now drones do the flying for us, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
being able to see more, I'm this last 3, 4 years, I've come to appreciate all the things that grow. You know, I when I drove for Lyft, I said, "We've got 1,000 shades of green in Washington," and the hedges are part of what builds a lot of isolation, invisibility. You know, it's kind of like a wall. There's lots of hedges around Seattle. In fact, I remember being in Dallas uh, when a bunch of windstorms came through, and I saw this one fence on this main drag that had been blown over. 2 weeks later, they had it back up, and another windstorm came through. You think there's not supposed to be a wall here anymore? You know,
Yeah.
when it was blown. But I want to mention, Mitzi, another lesson that was really impactful to me was um I I've been on various diets a lot over the years, and when I started saying I'm doing the best I know how, it kind of shut up that judgmental voice for myself. It made losing weight a little easier.
Yeah.
And it certainly helped processing trauma.
Well,
Now
absolutely.
it takes a while to get there, I agree.
Yeah.
And yet when you realize we're all sinners saved by grace and
Amen.
we're all doing the best we know how.
Hmm.
In fact, I had a conversation a little bit last night with a friend in on the East Coast, and he was judging me. If I didn't, say things using the same words he did, like Jesus' blood and the Holy Spirit. Well,
Yeah.
I correlate Holy Spirit with intuition, with being in the right place at the right time, and he had been in a right place at the right time, and God used him to help somebody solve somebody else's problem that there could have been 100 people and they wouldn't have had the answer that he did and was able to help her. But you know, God is in collaboration with
Absolutely. Even when we
and
don't even realize it, we are being used by God. And it's if by the littlest things. And it's like when we limit ourselves or limit other people by having that specific verbiage or that specific whatever, it's just to get it by, that limits you and that limits the other person. But when you recognize what's being said and the intention, that's the biggest thing, and that's what I hold on to is if your intentions are in the right place and you know that God is connected to your heart and he knows your heart and you know that your intentions are led by him, then there's nothing that no one in this world can tell you different. A lot that and what they're projecting out is their own judgment on themselves, their own criticism on themselves, their own rules that they can't abide by or can't go cross or anything like that. So it's like you can't, we can't, nobody can be subjected by somebody else because, yeah, roadblocks. There's constantly roadblocks by other people. And it's like, no, there's no roadblocks. There's no roadblocks as long as my intentions are in the right place. And it sucks that time's catching up to us, Sharon, because we're going to have to make up another excuse for you to come back on my show because I love having our conversations. I love you so much. This has been such a great time. But what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
One of my favorite things, and I just was at a graduation party yesterday, and so I wrote this on the card that I left there, is if one has a talent and fails to use it, one has failed. If one has a talent and partially uses it, one has partially failed. If one has a talent and finds somehow to use the whole of it, they have gloriously succeeded and won a satisfaction few people ever know. And that's what I want to do for my audience is help them find a satisfaction that few people ever know. And knowing how what God put in your heart and soul is what I am here to help you learn. And it's in Discover Your Spark, Rekindle Your Joy course on the Great Discovery platform.
Love that. I love that. I think that is something that people really need to think about and consider because it's not talked about enough. You know what I mean? It's truly not. And I think just, excuse me, just having that moment to reflect on our gifts and, oh, have I used it? What's limiting myself? What is really causing myself to not fully do it? Because you don't want it to go in vain. Oh my goodness, you don't want your gifts that God has given you, your purpose, your destiny to go in vain. Because, oh my goodness, it's a dreadful feeling knowing that God only told you to write and all you did was give him excuses not to write. What are you doing? If God told you to sing, then sing your heart out, girl. If God told you to be a parent, then be the best parent you can be. If you we have to start to listening and knowing what is our season. You know what I mean? Because if our season is to be selfless, then have that selfless season and own it and work it all the way. But if it's our moment to be selfish and focus on ourselves and focus on our love and focus on how to be in ourselves, then own it. But I think the problem is that when we go out into the world, we can't recognize whose season it is, and we assume, oh, well, you're just selfish. Well, no, you don't know. You don't know if they were selfless for so long that now they're finally standing up for themselves. Allow them to embrace that. Allow them to put their boundaries up. Allow them to have that respect that they never had before. You know what I mean? Recognize it. And I think that's one thing that I'm trying to let the people know around me is like, we are not here to judge. We are just here to embrace. We are just here to accept. We are just here to love. And if your job is to only to love somebody and accept somebody and embrace somebody, then you better do your darn job. And if you have any complaints, then you ask God to fix your perspective. You ask God to fix your heart. You ask God to fix whatever that's blocking you because we can put up our own blocks. So oh my goodness, Sharon. Yeah, we're gonna have to make an excuse to bring you on because time is flying by and we could keep talking about this. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know more about Sharon, because how could you not? Oh my goodness, how could you not after this conversation? Please go check her out. I have her lovely photo on my website. Just click on her photo, just bloop, and it goes directly to her website. And if you're on YouTube or listening in audio, in the description, you'll find access to her link so that you can continue on thinking, so that you can continue on striving to not feel invisible, to feel heard, to be heard, and to step into everything that you are meant to be because you are beautiful, you are great, and you are already perfect. What you doing trying to act like you're not perfect? Stop acting like you're not perfect. You're perfect. So with that being said, always, always, always keep thinking, y'all.